Yeah.
Is this right? What do I do?
Just hold on to these.
Is this distracting? Please.
I tend to be a backup.
Oh, all right.
Arabella,
come sit in the front.
Oh, I'm just so anti-mean. I'm always back of the class.
Okay, but now I'm front. Well, good for you. Here I am. Okay, this is the new me. Yay. 2025.
You're a front, but you're kind of going.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I can do this.
You're gonna inspire more front group ladies.
It is.
Hi there. All right, guys.
Mike, so
Shena's done such an incredible job of curating the most delicious food. And I was telling Arabella that I had some mozzarella that was covered in pesto, and I thought it was a big risk because I thought my breath was going to smell bad and you were going to be mad at me. But it had no after risk on my mouth. So thank you for choosing the most amazing food today.
Everybody should have a list.
Yes, exactly.
well, I believe in garlic bread.
That's
so funny. All right. Are we ready?
I think we're all set. So is your mic on? It's mine.
I don't know. I can't.
Perfect. Well, everyone, thank you so much for being here. Shena, I want to just open it up and tell everyone why on earth you curated such an incredible evening.
Well, where do I begin? First of all, thank you for joining us. And we are all here. I've talked to a few of you about this because Syama has curated the most incredible, and I'm going to use this word, movement, which is to empower women to take control of their financial lives and their financial futures. And I say there, but I kind of misspeak because it's really our. And so, here we are on a Friday night in New York. Take it back Friday night. This is really to get everyone together to start some conversations and for all of you to hear a bit more about what Syama is building for all of us to continue to create collectively. I'm passionate about it. I believe in it. And I'm going to be part of it. And I hope you'll all join us in this movement. So
Cry.
yeah, we're going to cry. We're going to laugh. We're going to cry. I think there's a lot of that going on right now, but we're also going to empower ourselves and we're going to get all the tools we need and all the strength that we need, and all the information we need to do this together. So, I'd love to start this conversation as we usually do by asking Syama to tell all of you how this all got started.
Well, there was a beginning and it started about 6 years ago. And a little bit before that was, I grew up in San Francisco. I moved to New York. I was here in New York for about 10 years, fell in love with Shena. And then I fell in love and moved to Los Angeles and got married. I started a company, and 6 years into my marriage, I realized I no longer wanted to be married to the person I was married to. And I had a business, and I had this really just profound realization that my business was also not going to have a big exit or be the big windfall that eventually I had hoped it would have. So here I was confronting a divorce, a total life change, and money was at the center of that conversation for me. So what did I do? I sent an email out to 50 girlfriends and I said, hey guys, who wants to talk to me about money? And 95% of them did not. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I mean, it was horrifying, especially because money is one of those things that you have a relationship to from the moment you're born until the moment you die, right? Money is something that we can't escape. So there were 3 women who wanted to have a conversation with me. 2 of them wanted to introduce me to their wealth managers. And one of them is sitting right next to me today who said, Shama, let's go on the fucking journey. Let's figure this out. And so that started 6 years ago. And so what did I do? I took the venture capital courses at Columbia. I started listening in on all the webinars. I joined syndicates. I was determined to figure out how to build my wealth beyond investing in a 401k or buying your first family home, right? These sorts of things had not been spoken about to me. And here I was running a company, feeling like I was on top of the world, could run the P&L and like feel really powerful in my business, but I did not feel powerful as a woman because I did not know what else I could do. So these conversations, I started raising my hands in different rooms and asking to speak with wealth expanders. And for me, a wealth expander is someone who's not going to tell you what to do. They'll tell you what they're doing. And in doing so, can inspire us to see possibilities, right? So started raising my hand and having these conversations. And that then quickly led to a podcast, which I launched last year, and it's coming up on its 1-year anniversary. It's called, thank you. It's called Getting Rich Together. And this podcast highlights the wealth building journey with a woman who starts from what was life like when you were a child, what were your parents like with money, how did it evolve over time, all the way to legacy. And I interview women who are just like us, right? People who we know. And the real intention behind that is that we can all see ourselves in her. So this isn't someone who's built wealth 30 years ago. This is someone who's actively still figuring things out. And it doesn't matter if she's inherited it, married into it. She's a badass entrepreneur who has spent her life building a great corporate career, right? The idea is that we are not ahead, we are not behind. We're all sort of tracking to where we need to be. So last summer, John, my husband in the back over there, he and I sat down and we started to realize that the success of this podcast was really like starting to resonate with so many women. We had quickly garnered over 1,000 5 stars on Spotify. We've recently won 2 national awards. And so John and I decided to go into business together. And the second husband's the best one. So if anyone knows, let me tell you, you know, and there's magic there. And so John and I are now both partners in life, but also partners in business. And so we came together and really started to look at what were the things that we could move the needle on to help women. And so we realized, and you guys have all heard these numbers, that there's a $30 trillion wealth transfer coming into the hands of women in the next 5 years. Only 28% of women feel confident with their capital. And so he and I are on a mission to close the 72%. And we believe we can achieve that through education, through all the lights turning off.
We just have to do the.
We just need to start moving. Like, through education, through great networks. So tonight is a great example, right? Shena's like, these are my people. I want you to come here. This is important because every woman needs to take another woman by the hand and help her see what's possible. So education networks and then great access to opportunities, right? I mean, how else are we going to know what we can do with our money unless we're talking to someone who we trust? And so this summit, and the reason why we're here tonight is we are going to be doing our second summit. Our first was in San Francisco. And the programming and the thesis of it is that this is a top of funnel summit. What does that mean? We are not financial products or banks, right? We're not coming at you and saying, hey, we're going to produce this event so you can become our client. What we're saying is there are so many possibilities and ways that you can invest your money that you actually deserve to know what you can do. So then you can then leave and say, well, maybe I want to try that. You know, maybe investing in Broadway is right for me, which it will be for you, Shena. We got to get you into the Broadway circuit. Or maybe it's buying a cash flowing business, right? Or maybe it's understanding how to structure your entrepreneurial exit so that you don't end up losing out, because so many women put all of their capital and time and energy in their startups to then realize that money isn't going to come, or it's not going to come the way they thought. So long story to your delicious question, Shena, but that is what we're doing today.
So I was just at the summit in San Francisco, which was an incredible day. I can tell all of you. And we learned a lot, but we also talked a lot. So tell us a little bit about that, a little bit about what makes the community unique. And I know one of the details I particularly loved about how we connected that day was, one thing I find so hilarious about all of these rooms is, you get a name tag, right? And it's always right here. Bunch of women, and that's right. Everybody's eye,
I'll
right?
give you a second one,
Eyes on my eyes. Nope, right here. And, everybody comes up to me, hi, Shena. But it says, talk to me about, and instead of my job. And I love that. I love that little detail, because immediately you start to get to know the person versus what they do for a living. And I think one of the things for me, and for probably, since I know a lot of you in this room personally, is it can be very overwhelming to think about money, to think about investing, to think about all the things you suppose you have to know about this world before you venture into it. So tell us a little bit about how you imagine those kinds of connections.
And you mentioned this the other night. You were like, I know someone who's been to so many more conferences. And yes, so I like conferences, and I love meeting incredible people. And I can't tell you how many events I've been to where you're standing next to someone who's like super incredible, but you don't know what to talk to them about. Right? You have to start with, oh, I love your shoes, or, something else. Right? And so a big part of this is, how do you actually connect people based on what's important to them? And so a big part of our summit is peer-to-peer matchmaking. So when you sign up for our summit, you will get a list of questions to answer and to fill out. And it asks you, what is something you can share about? And what is something you want to learn about? And what we do is I sit down and I go, okay, let me find the right people so that you can both learn the things you want to learn from someone who's a wisdom keeper, but you can also then teach someone something as a wisdom holder, right? And so that sort of exchange of information based on lived experiences is something that you'll never find in a money conference or a finance conference, because again, if this is non-transactional, this is based on us opening up what it is that we can learn from each other. And so peer-to-peer matchmaking is something that is so important. In fact, at the summit, we had 140 women in attendance, and we catalyzed over 800 connections, right? And we catalyzed over 800 connections. Now, to see women like bumping phones, exchanging information, everyone walked out of there with like at least 5 to 10 new people, right? Because everyone came with the intentionality around leaving their LinkedIn profiles at the door, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone in that room is brilliant. We're all successful, right? Everyone knows how to show up at work and do the thing. But this conversation is not about how well you run your P&L at work. This conversation is about your own personal finances. So in order to do that, we have to step away from the titles, from the jobs, from having to explain if you're in transition, right? Like, what are you doing? How do I explain that? I'm trying to figure things out. right? So we take away sort of that initial identity that most people associate themselves with and really get to the heart of the matter. So we did that on our badges with Ask Me About, everything from caring for aging parents, right? To how do you deal with being an empty nester, right? First time entrepreneur, fifth time entrepreneur. These are really important moments because it gives me an opportunity to realize more about you, but more importantly, an opportunity to connect you to each other, right? So that is how we enter into the conference with a lot of connection. The day with our badges and all the time, and Shena's feedback afterwards was like, we need more time to hang out with each other. So we listened. But all of that combined with our badges, and then obviously some intentional kind of co-creation networking spaces where we can really have facilitated conversations. But honestly, when we planned the facilitated networking, we thought it would be because women, like we would need to have a facilitator. And I have to say, in San Francisco, people were having their own facilitated conversations. I mean, the energy was electric. And I think that's because we gave everyone permission to be and to not have to live up to an identity.
So tell us a little bit more about your podcast.
Yeah. Okay. So, it's so funny is, when we first launched, we came out with the title of Getting Rich Together. I had some friends who thought it was so gauche. They were like, oh, that title, who is it going to appeal to? And I was like, but the essence of this is that we do it together, right? This concept of learning, and I'm sure every single woman in this room has figured something out, right? It's like whether it's the best accountant, whether or not it's, the right contractor, but all of these things have to do with their financial life, right? So this concept around the togetherness, I thought was so important. And this concept of being able to say, it doesn't really matter how the money entered into your life, right? What matters is what you're doing with it, right? What sort of agency are you taking with your resources? And so with that, I believe it's heavily values driven. And so in the podcast, right, we end up hearing from women's stories that are everything from, I didn't start investing in the stock market till I was in my 40s, right? To, oh my gosh, I, launched my first business in my 20s and did $1 million that year, right? All of the different kinds of stories. But it's interesting. Like we've had early on in our, in the history of the show, we had Rebecca Minkoff on the show. And she was talking about how she's done better with real estate as an asset class than as a fashion designer, right? These are stories that you may not hear everywhere else where people are talking about their LinkedIn profiles and why it is that, they're known for the work that they're doing. And so what I like to say is when someone's on the show, the best thing I do is really shine a light on their greatness. Because chances are, right, every woman you're listening to, and probably even yourself, right, has yet to have the opportunity to sit down and say, wow, like, look at the ways in which I've actually executed critical thinking and negotiating. And look at the ways in which I've managed difficult times and moments, right? We're so focused on the next thing that it's very rare to have the time to sit back and really chronicle and see the ways you've shown up in the world. And so it's funny because the show, I think, at the end of the day, women are like, I didn't know I needed this. I didn't know that like this was going to be so moving for me. So I've yet to be credentialed as a therapist, and I have no intention of going down that route. But there is something magical that happens, I think, when we give ourselves permission to share our story and to have someone exhibit deep listening. And that is what I do at the summit, like the summit, the summit, it's not, there are no keynotes, right? There's no one who's saying, I know better than you, right? There's no one who's on there who's a celebrity, right? And when it's all panels and all firesides, I get to show up again doing my zone of genius work, which is deep listening and asking the right questions and really breaking the taboos of the things that we have given so much hype to. These days we talk so much, everyone hears, right, about venture capital, right? It's like angel investing and venture, and really it's like the highest risk asset class, right? Most people should not be investing in it, right? And those who should be are not investing in it, right? And so when we think about what that looks like, and then the other conversation is investing in the stock market, right? It's like we actually need to pull these stories out so we can all understand how these things are possible. And so the deep listening in the podcast kind of carries through. And I think that sort of environment allows for these incredible women on stage, many of whom have really never been on stage before. They're not performers. They're not, seasoned speakers. These are women who are getting on stage and saying, I'm willing to share what I know because I believe in the collective power of breaking down silos so that we can ... get rich together.
The thread that I'm sort of pulling here is that you're having conversations and they're deeply personal and they're values driven. These are not people talking about work. They're not talking about what they do. They're talking about who they are. You've mentioned real estate. One of the panels in San Francisco that I really took note of was the real estate panel, and Kathy telling her story of being a kid. And God knows these days her parents would have been dragged off for actually maybe not these days, child labor. I don't know.
It's coming back. It's a new thing this year.
Coming back is also
Tomorrow, the New York Times. Child labor is a thing.
We're lowering the labor law age, but who knows? Anyway, I digress. But she was talking about how she learned her family business and how she worked with her parents, and it was such pin drop silence when she was telling her story. And it wasn't about work, it was about her childhood. It was such a child of immigrant story. And what I loved so much about that is I could have been, sitting in a theater, in a movie theater. I could have been reading a book. It was really poignant and gripping. And I feel like the vulnerability to sit up on a stage and hear someone talk about their childhood and how they came to their career, and how they grew up in this environment that wasn't like most of the people sitting in that audience was really, really sort of significant and sort of.
And it's how the whole day goes.
It was a unique experience. You don't get that at a keynote at TED. Or one of the, Scott Galloway talks at Summit, but looking at Rebecca, which is how we know each other. But, it's true. It's about your values. It's about where you come from. And I think it's a very unique way to sort of share about this particular topic. I don't think I've experienced that anywhere else.
It's so interesting because in putting all of this together, there's been these moments where you go from, and because you've been with me every step of the way, but you start going from a thought to a thing, right? If you've ever built anything or had a child or produced anything in your life, that there's a thought, and then all of a sudden that thought takes form and shape and it turns into something. And so the summit, to be able to witness that and to be able to say, I have a vision that women are going to come together and share deep and powerful stories so that we can make massive change in the world, was a really big, tall order, right? It's like, would women be willing to do this? Will people show up to listen, right? Will it be able to have the change in the world? And so to be able to, and again, going from thought to a thing, the thing I've realized is that my biggest gift or power is to hold the vision, right? Because you have to be a beacon of the thing that you want to create in order to attract the right people along the mission. And so this concept of our values, right? Values, freedom, choice, has really become so much at the top of this conversation. Because at the end of the day, every single woman on stage, every single woman here in the audience has a vision of the world she wants to see. And that vision is actually not, these visions are not competitive, right? It's like we actually have an opportunity to create the world that we want. And so the women that we are attracting are women who are coming together and saying, okay, if I sit quiet and listen deeply, right, I can drop into a concept called being self-interested. I can figure out what moves me. What do I want to be? What do I want to do? Like, how do I want to live my life? What are my values? And in that process of being self-interested, we shift away from selfishness, which is, oh, you have those shoes. I want those. Or, oh, you went here on vacation. I want to go on vacation there. We stop grasping for the things outside of us when we get quiet, listen deeply, and start becoming self-interested. And so I believe this concept, which we've all been really broadcasted around lately, around abundance, right? And what does that mean? And, is it magical thinking? Is it, a way to live your life? I think could easily be distilled into if we were all self-interested and living out the things that matter to us most, and we were all connected with ourselves, then we would find out that there is so much more in the world that's available to all of us. And so these women on stage or on the podcast or even in the audience are being self-interested. They're saying, I'm building wealth creatively. I'm doing it in ways that matter to me, right? I'm hedging risk and making investments in ways that I feel comfortable with, not in the ways that someone else is telling me I should feel comfortable doing it. And that, I think, is a real change.
I love it. So tell us what's happening in May.
Oh my gosh. Well, in May 13th, we are fortunate enough to be hosted by MasterCard. So for being a fledgling brand here, you guys, we're doing some pretty big things. So we'll be at the MasterCard Tech Hub on 5th Avenue and 20th. It's going to be a full day of incredible conversations, of connection. We're pulling together Kathy's coming back. Yes. So Kathy's coming back on stage. But we're also pulling together some new women, some fresh voices. And our idea and vision for this conference is not that it only lives in New York and San Francisco. These happen to be places where I have best friends who live in. And so that makes it great for me. But we really, John and I want to take this conference around the country, right? We believe that it's so important that we meet women where they are. And when it comes to power, agency, capital, values, changing the world, right? To your vision, whatever that vision is, we want to embolden that woman to be able to take the next step in her financial journey. And that financial journey could be anything from putting some money into a community bank in order to help, support the mission and causes of maybe giving out loans to women-owned businesses, or whether that is rethinking how maybe you're investing in your portfolio when you're putting some money into WCEO, which is a fantastic ETF that indexes the top female-led CEO companies that are publicly traded. Or whether that is doing things that are more risky, right? And going into venture or buying a cash flow business, et cetera. But we want to embolden this woman to say, you know what? I think I want to try this, right? And give her access to the resources and the people who can help her. So we're doing that in May in New York. It's going to be a fantastic day. You guys you all have some postcards on the table. We were very lucky to capture the domain Wealth Catalyst Summit. So I feel really proud about that, for very SEOable. But that's what's happening in May. And we're starting to look at other markets. We're starting to coalesce the women who are coming together, both with continued experiences that are beyond the summit. Certainly everyone here is part of maybe 200 WhatsApp channels, but we hope to be 201 on your WhatsApp. But the idea here is, where do you go to share opportunities with people, right? Where do you go where you can ask questions, where this isn't someone who's an expert, or who's someone who can lead you to the expert who they vouch for because they've worked with them, right? As we're all stepping into a new generation of wealth, a new generation of power, our networks become so essential and critical to the success of how we deploy and manage our capital, right? So we want to be that place to be able to give women a safe space to create that. So that is May and beyond. And the last thing I'll say about sort of our vision together is John and I really believe that it's both work on the public and private side that's going to be able to move the needle. Obviously right now what we're doing is building out this conference series, getting women together, but we have future plans for a policy center. We want to start to affect legislation. We want to be able to move the needle on how we really think about financial literacy. California's done a great job. They're now introducing education into high schools around personal finance. Holy bananas. I wish that was, there for me when I was growing up. But we want to be able to move the needle because if you think about it, this great wealth transfer, this $30 trillion, if 72% of women don't feel confident with this sudden wealth, what's going to happen? Money is going to come out of the economy, right? What happens when women get scared, right? I have girlfriends who sold houses and they put their money in the savings account. Why? Because they were ill-informed, right? The person they were working with didn't say, oh, what else are you thinking about? How are you thinking about exercising this? And so we need our communities. We need to be able to ask our friends, hey, how much was that? Or who do you bank with, right? And we also need to have the safe spaces to do that, right? So that is what we are creating not only now, but sort of as we build into the future. And so I'll end with, we need your help. This is both an opportunity to invite you to come to our summit and be a part of what we're building, but also an opportunity for you to raise your hand and say, I know somebody, right? I know other people. I know businesses that want to support this. I believe in what we're doing. Because during my meditation last summer, when John and I sat down, it was very clear what we're building. Would you listen, Wayne? What we're building has really nothing to do with us. Nothing. We happen to be struck with vision and emboldened by a naivete and a lot of courage. And we are fueled by incredible friends and kind partners and people who also believe in this. But it has nothing to do with us. And so my last words are, we need you. And thank you so much for being here. It means a lot.
Thank you. And thank you, John.
Yeah.
My vision for the future is to see more allies in these rooms. My dad was a big ally. He always encouraged me to learn about money and empower myself financially. And John is such an ally to support this movement too. So
Thanks, baby. Shall we?
Yeah.
All right. Music on. Baby, will you turn the music on?
thank you for being an ally.
Totally.
Money and parties.
It's giving us the best assist. Yeah. Nice to meet you. Yeah. Thank you. This was great. Oh, you're so welcome. I'm Syama. Oh, I've heard so much about you. Shena loves you. Thank you. I'm surprised it's incredible. I get all for development so I can understand exactly.
It's been a long time. I think, well, since Shena's birthday. 2 years. Oh my God. Yeah, okay. Time is elastic for me at the moment. That's great. Yeah. Yeah. Well, surviving.
hard
I
time.
mean,
Yeah.
we're called to the mission.
It's no word to use.
What's that?
It's like hard is not the right word.
Yeah, no, I thought the first term was going to be, and that was a fucking cakewalk.
That was a cakewalk. I thought we were done after the
Yeah,
first term.
same. And now,
And the worst thing will happen, which is money
yeah,
will
so surviving.
come out. And
And that's about all.
It's your own little microcosm.
Oh, yeah.